There's a kind of peace that settles deep in your bones when you watch the sun rise from your porch, coffee in hand, wood creaking under your boots, and the scent of dew mingling with dry earth. Mornings like that remind you why you worked so hard all those years. Why did you save? Why did you endure long commutes, late nights, and endless meetings? I had finally reached the part of life where the clock no longer dictated my every move. Retirement. The land, passed down from my grandfather to my father, and now to me, wasn't just soil and fences. It was a memory, legacy. When you've walked the same pastures for decades, when you've leaned against the same oak, when the wind carries the same whistle through the barn rafters, it all becomes part of who you are. This ranch was my anchor. I figured my days would be spent mending fences, repainting barns, maybe finally fixing that south pasture gate that had leaned for years. But instead, I found myself watching a scene so ridiculous I wouldn't have believed it a decade ago. The peace of dawn was shattered one morning with the screech of tires and the wail of sirens. 3 patrol cars barreled down my dirt road, kicking up a storm of dust as they raced toward my gate. Through the haze, I spotted Karen Whitfield, president of the Sunset Hills HOA, flailing her arms like she was directing traffic at a parade. Her voice carried across the dry air, sharp and shrill. "He's in there! The violent squatter! He threatened me!" I stood on my porch, calm as ever, coffee mug still in hand, watching the chaos unfold. When the officers approached my fence, hands hovering near their holsters, I slowly lifted my free hand. "Morning, officers," I said evenly. "Name's Jake Morrison. This here's my ranch. Been in my family since 1952. Would you like to see the deed?" 6 months earlier, life was quieter, simpler. I just retired after 40 years as an engineer. Figured it was time to give the old place the care it deserved. The barn needed a new roof, the fences sagged, and the farmhouse, though sturdy, needed a little love to match the pride I felt for it. Most days were spent with the hum of saws and the ring of hammers, the sweet scent of fresh lumber filling the air. It felt good, honest, to work with my hands again. Then came the first letter. A crisp white envelope, stiff paper, stamped with an official-looking seal, Sunset Hills Homeowners Association. I remember chuckling when I opened it. Some nonsense about violations. Section 3.4 for construction noise, Section 5.1 for unapproved renovations. My smile faded as I realized it wasn't a joke. See, my ranch sits half a mile outside of Sunset Hills. Always has. My family's been here since long before anyone dreamed of their beige stucco homes and matching mailboxes. Their subdivision didn't even exist until the 90s. I figured it was a mix-up, filed the letter away, and went back to hanging new barn doors. "That was my first mistake. The letters didn't stop." One complained about my century-old oak tree. Another claimed the odor from my horses was a community disturbance. The next demand I repaint my barn to match their approved palette of taupe and eggshell. Each one, without fail, was signed, Karen Whitfield. HOA president. I tried to handle it the right way, respectfully. I showed up to one of their meetings, put on my good boots, brought a folder full of property records, tax documents, and boundary maps. I laid them neatly on their polished conference table and said, steady but polite, "Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the Morrison Ranch predates your development by 70 years. My property's outside your jurisdiction." Karen's expression twisted, her face turning a deep shade somewhere between beet and fire engine red. "That's what you think?" she replied sweetly, her voice dripping with condescension. "Our research shows differently. This entire area falls under our governance." "Your research," I said evenly, "is wrong." And that's when everything began to spiral. Within 2 weeks, inspectors started showing up at my gate, zoning officers, environmental regulators, even someone from something called the Community Development Compliance Task Force. Each one had a clipboard. Each one said they were just following up on a report, and each one traced back to the same name, Karen Whitfield. Each inspector who showed up carried paperwork, all claiming my land was part of some long-forgotten subdivision called Meadowbrook Estates, supposedly abandoned back in 2005. The planning inspector, Bill, looked like a man running on fumes, eyes heavy. coffee in hand, clipboard under his arm. He squinted down at the stack of forms, then looked at me, then at the freshly shingled barn roof gleaming in the morning sun. "Bill," I said evenly, "this property's been in my family since Eisenhower. You really think it's abandoned?" He gave a weary glance toward the new fence posts, the fresh gravel in the drive, the mug of coffee steaming beside me. He shook his head. "No, sir, I don't. But something's definitely off here. That night, sleep didn't come easily. My gut told me this wasn't just red tape. It was coordinated. Too precise, too deliberate. So I started digging. I spent the next 3 weeks buried in the county archives. Old maps, deeds, microfilm records, planning commission minutes, stuff most folks forgot even existed. What I uncovered chilled me to the core. There were forged documents, fake plat maps that redrew property lines overnight, an affidavit supposedly signed by me on a date I was halfway across the country, fly fishing in Alaska. I still had the receipts and time-stamped photos to prove it. Even a falsified survey claiming I'd voluntarily annexed my land into the HOA. It was like watching someone slowly erase your life, one document at a time. So I decided to confront it head-on. At the next HOA meeting, Karen had packed the community center full, probably expecting a public takedown. I walked up to the podium carrying a thick folder and took a breath. "Good evening," I began, voice steady. "I'm here tonight to present evidence of fraud, forgery, and falsified filings made by members of this board." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen shot to her feet. "How dare you?" I opened the folder. "Exhibit A," I said, holding up a map. A forged plat submitted to the county. "Exhibit B, a document bearing my forged signature. Exhibit C, a doctored property survey." Gasps filled the room as I laid each one out in order. Karen's face drained of color. "You can't prove we did anything," she shrieked. "Actually," I said, allowing a small smile, "the metadata on these files shows they were submitted from your personal email, not the HOA's. 3 days later, my front gate was plastered with bright orange notices. Abandoned property. HOA seizure pending." The legal jargon stretched on for paragraphs, but the message was clear. They were doubling down. Then came the 911 call. Karen claimed I was a violent squatter who'd threatened her, and that's how we got back to the scene with the sirens. The dust, and Sergeant Rodriguez standing at my fence. Paperwork in hand while Karen ranted about trespassing. "Ma'am," he finally said, voice steady but firm. "These documents clearly show Mr. Morrison owns this land. What exactly is your claim?" She shoved a stack of papers toward him. "These prove it's HOA property." Rodriguez scanned both sets carefully, his brow tightening. "Ma'am, these appear to be forgeries. I'm forwarding this to our fraud division. Karen lost it. This is harassment. I'm the HOA president." But I wasn't done yet. I hired a licensed surveyor to verify every inch of my boundary lines. A document analyst confirmed the signatures were forged. And then I brought in Sarah Chen, a sharp, young investigative journalist from the county ledger. Within a week, her article hit the front page. Suburban HOA accused of fraudulent land grabs. Turns out, my case was only one of several. Other families had quietly lost pieces of their land through the same shady tactics. The story caught the attention of the state attorney general. Subpoenas were issued. Investigations opened. When the evidence started piling up, Karen tried to blame her board members, but the digital trail led straight back to her. 6 months later, we all sat in a packed courthouse. The judge flipped through the binders of evidence, his expression darkening with every page. Finally, he looked up. "This court finds clear and convincing evidence of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false instruments, and attempted grand theft," he said firmly. The defendant's actions represent a blatant abuse of power and public trust. Karen's attorney begged for leniency. The judge didn't flinch. 3 years in state prison, he declared. $250,000 in fines, permanent ban from HOA service, and restitution of $500,000 to Mr. Morrison. Karen's mask cracked. She screamed about property values and mailboxes as the bailiffs cuffed her and let her out. "This is all your fault," she shouted. "You and your stupid ranch!" I just watched as they took her away, that polished suburban armor stripped clean, revealing what had always been underneath: entitlement, greed, and the belief that the rules didn't apply to her. As for me, life went back to the rhythm I loved. I still wake up to the sound of birds, the whisper of wind through the old oak tree she once tried to have cut down. The barn's roof gleams in the morning sun. The porch is sturdy beneath my feet, and my coffee, well, it tastes a little sweeter these days. If this story hit home, give it a like. It helps more folks hear what really happens behind those polished gates and HOA signs. And if you want more true stories about standing your ground, holding the line, and not letting the system push you around, subscribe. Out here, we still believe in truth, in land, and in never backing down.